Welcome, traveler of thoughts and dreamer of questions. You've found yourself in a quiet corner of the vast digital cosmos, where physics whispers instead of shouts, and consciousness reveals its mysteries, one soft layer at a time. Maybe you've had a long day, your mind carrying the usual cargo of tasks, hopes, and unanswered curiosities. So, take a slow breath, let the noise of the world fade behind you. Tonight, we'll drift together into a mystery that no laboratory has yet contained, and no scientist has fully solved: the hidden physics of consciousness. What if the mind isn't only a mirror that reflects reality, but also a lens shaping it? What if beneath the chatter of thoughts, beneath the firing of neurons, there's an invisible choreography, a quantum dance that gives birth to your every experience? And what if part of your mind doesn't want you to see that truth, because to see it would dissolve the boundary between observer and observed, dreamer and dream? For more than a century, physics has told us that matter behaves differently in the invisible depths of the quantum realm. Particles flicker between possibilities until an observer's gaze collapses them into something definite. Energy hums in uncertain waves, fields of potential waiting for attention to anchor them. But what if consciousness itself is not a passive observer at all? What if it is woven directly into those waves? The hidden physics of consciousness might be the bridge between two long divided worlds, the measurable and the meaningful, the physical and the personal. Imagine that right now, beneath the warmth of your skin and behind the veil of your closed eyelids, electrical whispers are traveling through billions of neural circuits. They light up thought patterns, stretch across chemical synapses, and form the currents of feeling you call me. For most of modern neuroscience, this is the accepted story. Consciousnness is an emergent property of atoms arranged just so, a consequence of biological complexity. But a few quiet voices in science, from physicists to neurologists to philosophers, whisper that something deeper may be at play. They suggest that consciousness might not simply be produced by the brain, but that the brain may act as a tuning device, amplifying an underlying field of awareness that already exists everywhere. Think of a radio. The broadcast isn't inside the device, but the receiver tunes to it. You could say your neurons are the quantum receivers of a cosmic transmission, and physics, as strange as it seems, might already contain the clues. In quantum theory, tiny particles, electrons, photons, even whole atoms, can exist in a superposition of states, meaning they are simultaneously many possibilities until observed. Yet what counts as observation has baffled scientists for decades. Does a measuring instrument suffice? Or must there be awareness, a mind, for reality to become real? Some physicists, like the late John Wheeler, believed consciousness might be a participator in the very act of creation. The universe doesn't exist until it is observed. He called it the participatory universe. If that's true, then your awareness right now might be weaving fragments of energy into the fabric of reality just by being awake. Let's sit with that thought for a moment. If every conscious observer contributes to the making of reality, then perhaps your daily perceptual world, your coffee cup, your reflection, the constancy of your room, isn't as stable as it looks. Perhaps what feels solid and permanent is a cooperative dream built out of infinite quantum possibilities, stabilized by shared attention. There's a quiet implication hidden there. You might be helping the universe hold itself together. But there's another side. If consciousness indeed shapes the physical universe, why does it hide that fact from itself? Why do you feel separate from the table, the moon, or the stars stretching far beyond your reach? Maybe separation is the necessary illusion that allows consciousness to play the game of being human. In hiding its own physics, the mind protects the experiment, an experiment called life. Take another breath. Notice the faint hum at the base of your awareness. As you inhale, particles in the air collide with your lungs, quantum fields exchange information, and electromagnetic patterns shift subtly in your neural circuits. The entire process that lets you experience breath is physical, but your awareness of it, that shimmering quality of being, remains unmeasured, invisible, yet undeniable. That invisible something is what scientists call the hard problem of consciousness. The question of how physical matter gives rise to subjective experience. No equation yet explains why you feel anything at all. But what if physics, hidden just beneath our conventional equations, already has the answer? We just haven't looked with the right eyes. All around the world, researchers are exploring hints of quantum behavior in living systems. In a frozen lab at Oxford, biophysicists are watching how photosynthetic complexes in plants use quantum effects to transport energy with near-perfect efficiency. In birds, quantum coherence seems to help them navigate Earth's magnetic fields with uncanny precision. And in human neurons, faint quantum vibrations may be flickering inside microtubules, cellular scaffolds so tiny most microscopes overlook them. These delicate quantum beats might survive even amidst the warmth and chaos of the brain. If they do, they could form the physical rhythm through which consciousness interfaces with matter. Imagine consciousness as a tide. Microtubules could be the grains of sand shifting within it. When enough grains align, the tide begins to take shape, forming awareness itself. This would mean consciousness isn't some ghostly phenomenon existing apart from the body. It is physics, performing at a hidden frequency, one the classical equations never predicted. It would also mean your awareness is not locked in your skull. Like entangled particles whose fates remain linked across galaxies, your consciousness might ripple through a universal quantum field, subtly entangled with all of existence. And yet your mind often resists such thoughts. It says, that can't be true, it's too strange. That skepticism, that defensiveness, is not a flaw, it's the mind's protective reflex. Our mental architecture evolved to filter the incomprehensible. The hidden physics of consciousness has been cloaked precisely because seeing it feels too vast, too unanchored, too cosmic for daily life. The brain insists on the illusion of separateness, the way a diver's suit protects a swimmer from the deep ocean. Without that boundary, we might lose our bearings in the infinite. Still, curiosity draws us toward the hidden. So tonight, let's travel deeper into that dimension where subjective and objective realities blur. The threshold between measurable phenomenon and personal experience, that's where the mystery lies. You don't have to believe or disbelieve. You can simply wonder. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the entire Milky Way turning slowly in the dark, billions of stars circling a galactic center. Now imagine one of those stars, a small one, surrounded by a planetary system whereon one tiny planet a mind is reflecting on its own existence. That mind is yours. Through you, the universe gazes back at itself and tries to understand. The wave collapses, becomes real, and wonders why it's real. The observer and the observed complete an ancient loop, a feedback of being. Every scientific revolution started with someone daring to see what others deemed impossible. When Copernicus suggested Earth wasn't the center of the cosmos, people resisted, their worldview trembled. When quantum mechanics revealed particles behaving like probability waves, classical physics resisted. And now perhaps a new frontier beckons, consciousness itself realizing it may participate in the very physics that define it. Your mind doesn't want you to see it, not because you aren't ready, but because seeing changes the experiment itself. Awareness observed becomes awareness transformed. In a few minutes, we'll move further, tracing how these ideas shift our understanding of time, free will, and the illusion of self. For now, let the thoughts settle gently. Maybe you are not inside the universe. Maybe the universe is inside your consciousness. Time, that quiet ruler of your days, might not be flowing the way you think it does. Classical physics paints time as a steady river, moving forward, 1 second at a time, indifferent to our feelings. But quantum mechanics, ever defiant of common sense, treats time less like a river and more like a shimmering field of possibilities. A dimension in superposition where past, present, and future overlap in subtle ways. If consciousness is linked with quantum processes, then the way you experience time might not just be a side effect of memory. It could be an act of participation, of continual creation. Each conscious moment may not simply follow the next. It collapses the probability wave of what could be into what is. Your awareness might be the pencil drawing the line we call time on the page of a boundless universe. Every choice, every realization, every gaze carries the subtle power of reselecting reality from the infinite fabric of possibilities that physics calls the wave function. Some researchers even toy with this notion, not out of mysticism but out of sheer necessity. When the equations refuse to define an observer independent of observation, perhaps the observer is more than a spectator. Perhaps it is the act of observation itself that gives events direction and meaning. If this is true, then consciousness might be less a passenger moving through time and more of an artist painting it as we go. The past would not be a fixed archive of events, rather, it might be something rewritten every time it's recalled. That could explain the slipperiness of memory, why recollections evolve, and why entire lives can be reframed by a single insight. Each act of remembering could be a micro-collapse of probability, a negotiation between what was and what can still become. Physics once insisted that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but information, especially information as intimate as awareness, still resists that same containment. You may find that to be a strangely comforting thought that nothing real about you, in the deepest sense, can vanish. The patterns may change, the signals flicker, but the field itself continues. Some theorists describe consciousness as a form of information woven through the quantum vacuum, persistent and adaptable. Death in that framework isn't annihilation but transformation, the collapse of one configuration of awareness into another. Your mind, for all its fears, may be afraid to see this because to glimpse it would dissolve the greatest assumption of all that self and world are separate, that beginning and ending exist in isolation. Pause and notice how your body feels in this moment, the steady hum beneath your skin, the almost imperceptible buzzing that happens when you truly listen. That vibration is physics expressed as presence. Every atom that composes you has existed since the first stars burned hydrogen in the void. The iron in your blood was once forged in stellar furnaces. The carbon in your cells was born from the collapse of suns. When we talk about the hidden physics of consciousness, we're not introducing something foreign. We're simply remembering what the universe has been doing all along, transforming energy into experience, stars into sentience. Let's turn the lens inward, down to the smallest architecture of awareness. A neuron fires, releasing a pulse of electricity that carries thought from one cell to another. Trace that further down and you reach the molecular skeleton of that neuron, the network of microtubules we mentioned before. Inside those rings of protein, quantum vibrations form patterns, oscillations so delicate they border on the invisible. Yet within that delicate hum, your sensations, your images, your I am may be born. Far from being random, these patterns could be orchestrated into coherence the way a symphony aligns its instruments to create recognizable music. The tune, consciousness itself. Penrose and Hameroff's orchestrated objective reduction hypothesis is controversial, often criticized for being too daring. But the evidence supporting quantum behavior in biology continues to grow. In photosynthesis, coherence improves efficiency. In avian navigation, entanglement allows perception of magnetic directions. Why would evolution ignore such a potent tool in the brain, nature's most complex device? The mind might be a layered reality system, integrating both classical and quantum regimes, classical networks for reliability, quantum fields for creativity and awareness. Perhaps consciousness forms exactly where those regimes overlap, the border where matter begins to dream. There's an aesthetic beauty to this view. It restores unity between scientific and spiritual intuition without forcing either to surrender its truth. It allows the cosmos to remain wondrous without discarding rigor, and lets human existence feel sacred without mystery by decree. Most important, it returns your awareness to its rightful place not as an accidental byproduct of matter, but as matter's way of knowing itself. The equations of physics describe external behavior, but inside those equations something experiential might be breathing, a universe practicing self-recognition through you. For a moment, imagine that recognition spreading. The quantum field doesn't end at your skin, its fluctuations extend infinitely. So what if consciousness isn't singular? What if every mind is a local resonance in a sea of awareness, each perspective a point of interference that gives reality texture? When you feel empathy, when you sense someone else's mood before they speak, it might be more than emotional intuition. It might be entanglement at work, consciousness touching itself across space without classical transmission. Experiments hint at synchronized brain patterns between individuals engaged in deep rapport, as though their perceptions achieve temporary coherence. On the macro scale, it could mean that civilization itself is a collective experiment in tuning distributed consciousness into harmony. Now picture how that idea ripples outward. If awareness really influences physical outcomes at quantum levels, the cumulative gaze of billions could shape probability fields on a planetary scale. It sounds sensational, but tiny effects multiplied across vast numbers often yield measurable change, much like countless photons combine into sunlight. Global coherence experiments have recorded slight but consistent shifts in random signal generators during major collective events. Coincidence? Possibly. Something more. Perhaps the faint tremor of consciousness as a physical force newly stirring. Your mind, protective and pragmatic, often suppresses this possibility. It prefers the comfort of isolation. My thoughts belong to me, the world happens to me. It filters evidence that suggests otherwise. That's how it maintains narrative continuity, sanity's anchor in an unpredictable cosmos. But every so often, in deep love, in creative flow, in silent or under a night sky, the filter thins, and you sense the vastness humming beneath ordinary perception. That flicker of boundlessness feels both thrilling and terrifying. Part of you reaches for it, part of you looks away. This push and pull, this cosmic shyness, is exactly what the phrase, "what your mind doesn't want you to see," refers to. It's the meeting point of knowing and forgetting, the veil necessary for individuality to exist. Quantum physics meets psychology here, in the duality of seeing and being seen. Observing the quantum world changes it, observing your own consciousness changes you. When you notice awareness itself, who is the observer? The question loops back endlessly, like mirrored reflections fading into infinity. Perhaps self-awareness is the universe inventing an experiment so subtle that the act of measurement becomes indistinguishable from creation itself. Picture a photon leaving a distant star millions of years ago, traveling across the emptiness. Its path determined the instant you observe it tonight. That simultaneous backward and forward entanglement, called retrocausality, is still debated, but its poetry is undeniable. In that light, you and the star complete each other's existence. It's shown so that you could see, and you perceive so that its journey gains meaning. Consciousness as the closing bracket of cosmic equations. As this thought settles, feel how the boundaries inside you start to soften. The scientist and the seeker, the matter and the mind, they aren't opponents. They're the same melody played on different instruments, and the hidden physics of consciousness may not be hiding at all. It may be gently waiting for us to slow down enough to notice. So take another unhurried breath. The simple act of breathing participates in universal law, pressure equalizing, molecules exchanging, entropy balanced by rhythm. Within those invisible yet precise movements, life persists and awareness observes. The sooner we see that physics and consciousness are not separate domains but parts of a single dialogue, the sooner the veil begins to lift. And when it does, you might realize a subtle truth: the universe doesn't need to explain consciousness. Consciousness is the universe explaining itself. If consciousness influences the unfolding of reality, then every decision you make may echo through the quantum field, collapsing possibilities into one chosen thread. And if those probabilities are truly endless, then free will and destiny cease to be opposites. They become partners in a greater choreography. You are free in the sense that your awareness participates in choice, yet what you can choose is shaped by the wave function of the universe itself. Picture a musician improvising within the structure of a song. The melody is open, but the key defines its bounds. Consciousness works the same way, improvising freedom within cosmic law. Free will has long felt incompatible with physics. In classical mechanics, cause and effect rule everything. Particles move according to forces and initial conditions. But the quantum world introduces indeterminacy, genuine uncertainty that no equation can eliminate. If your mind truly functions on quantum principles, then the source of decision could lie not in rigid determinism or in random chance, but in something deeper. The creative collapse of possibility guided by intention. Each act of will becomes a gentle steering of entropy, a nudge in the sea of probability toward meaning. Imagine for a moment that your next thought isn't born, but selected, from a spectrum of potential ideas vibrating in the neural quantum field. You're not inventing it, you're collapsing it into reality. It appears as inspiration, intuition, or sudden clarity, but under the surface it's the same physics that guides cosmic formation. Galaxies don't gather by accident, gravity shapes their probability fields. Likewise, consciousness shapes thought space, sculpting coherence from chaos. That notion carries a quiet responsibility. If awareness has even a small influence on reality, then intention matters. Compassion, focus, curiosity, these aren't just moods, they may be tuning parameters of the field. When you hold an image in mind of helping someone, of creating beauty, you might tilt probabilities ever so slightly toward that outcome. Not magic, but microscopic cause weaving into macroscopic unfoldings. The hidden physics of consciousness could therefore be ethical as well as empirical. How you think might alter what can become. Still, a skeptical whisper arises: if this were true, why can't we simply wish mountains into the sky? The answer lies in scale and coherence. The quantum influence of any single mind is subtle. Only when patterns align, inside one brain or among many, does coherence amplify into something observable. One raindrop can't carve stone, but persistent rain reshapes canyons. So too with consciousness, countless coherent moments accumulate into visible evolution. What looks like chance might be collective intention diffusing through matter over centuries. Understanding this doesn't cancel science, it deepens it. The scientific method itself is consciousness disciplined, an agreement to observe without bias, to let reality reveal itself. Measured in that light, even skepticism becomes a sacred function, the universe questioning its own assumptions. The hidden physics of consciousness isn't a rejection of objectivity, but its completion, a reminder that measurement and meaning are different faces of the same mirror. As awareness studies itself through science, it learns humility. Every breakthrough births new puzzles, dark matter, quantum gravity, the origin of information. Each mystery points toward a frontier where equations thin out and personal experience begins. Consciousness sits precisely there, at the convergence of knowing and being. It refuses to be confined to either subject or object, because it is the bridge between them. Perhaps that's why progress feels slow, because consciousness can't fully map itself without first transforming in the process. Picture researchers late at night, monitors glowing softly, their breath fogging cooled glass around delicate instruments. They stare at data from neural scans and quantum detectors, seeking coherent signatures, tiny clues that the mind's hidden physics is leaving measurable footprints. Some will dismiss what they find, others will glimpse patterns they barely understand. All of them, knowingly or not, are participants in the same experiment that you're part of right now, the universe, testing how far self-awareness can extend into matter. Now step back from laboratories and imagine this at a human scale. Every moment two people meet eye to eye, subtle synchronization occurs. Heart rates, micro-expressions, neural rhythms shifting toward alignment. Studies show that mutual attention literally harmonizes brain waves. Beyond metaphor, it's physics of empathy, fields coupling through shared observation. The physics classroom and the meditation hall might be studying different aspects of the same truth. That coherence between systems increases information flow, that understanding arises not from isolation but from resonance. When entire communities share attention, watching the same sunrise, mourning, celebrating, the field of coherence broadens a little. Humanity becomes a single sensor network for cosmic meaning. The mind that doesn't want to see this prefers fragmentation. It feels safer when each of us believes we're separate. But hidden beneath that illusion, collective awareness hums, quietly, organizing chaos into culture, discovery, and compassion. Civilization itself could be consciousness scaling up, atoms becoming people, people becoming planetary thought. If that sounds grandiose, anchor it back in the simplest act: noticing. Awareness of awareness. Beneath language, behind emotion, there is a silence that feels like being held by something larger than thought. In that spaciousness, perception and physics touch. Observation changes what's observed not just in laboratories but in your own experience. When you focus on gratitude, neurons strengthen their cooperative firing. When fear dominates, synchronization fractures. Mind states shape matter from the inside out. Modern imaging now confirms what ancient intuition sensed, that attention reorganizes the brain. The observer effect is alive in everyday life. Here's the paradox: the more you witness consciousness as universal, the more personal life becomes precious. Instead of dissolving individuality, it sanctifies it. A single thought, a single act of kindness, ripples through countless interconnected systems. The equations of chaos theory call this sensitivity to initial conditions. Spiritual traditions call it karma or resonance. Different words, same humility. Small causes can yield vast effects when timing and coherence align. As night deepens around you, the hum of appliances or distant traffic fades into a background drone. The rhythm of your breathing syncs with that hum until boundaries blur. You are sensing, directly, participation, micro and macro merging. This is not fantasy, it's perception tuning to its own source. For most of human history, such moments were coded as mystical revelation. Today we might call them glimpses of the hidden physics of consciousness, where silence carries information and stillness vibrates with infinite possibility. If everything in existence participates in awareness to some degree, then evolution itself could be understood as consciousness learning to perceive more of itself. From single-celled organisms responding to light, to mammals dreaming, to humans asking cosmic questions, the trajectory curves towards self-reflection. And perhaps beyond us lie forms of awareness we can hardly imagine, planetary, stellar, or universal minds whose scale outstrips comprehension. We wouldn't recognize them as alive because they move in eons, not seconds. Yet our species might serve as their neurons, our discoveries their synaptic sparks. That thought may humble you or exhilarate you. It hardly matters which, because either feeling is evidence that consciousness is expanding. When the mind glimpses its own scope, it trembles. That trembling is awakening disguised as uncertainty. It's okay that your thoughts recoil a little, part of them must. The self that resists is the same self that ensures you return from wonder still capable of human tasks tomorrow. Awareness hides its infinite reflection in order to keep living inside time. That is the compassion built into physics itself. So as this exploration continues, hold both truths, the ordinary and the infinite. Toast and tea on the table and quantum fields buzzing in your brain. There is no contradiction, only scale. The hidden physics of consciousness may be cosmic in origin, yet it arrives through the simplicity of being alive right now. As our journey nears its quiet horizon, notice how everything you've heard begins to circle back to one idea. Consciousness and physics are two languages describing the same song. We have spent centuries translating the universe into mathematics, diagrams, and data, but underneath all those equations runs an unspoken melody, the felt sense of being aware. Perhaps the laws we've uncovered are simply the patterns awareness produces when it tries to see itself. The hidden physics of consciousness may not lie in exotic particles or secret equations, but in the plain miracle of perception. Consider how vision works. Light bounces off the world, enters your eyes, is converted into neural signals, and somehow becomes the bright, colorful theater you call sight. There is nothing in the electrical impulse itself that resembles a sunset or a loved one's face. The transformation from stimulus to experience happens nowhere we can point to. Somewhere between energy and understanding, the universe turns inward and discovers it can feel. That frontier, where energy becomes meaning, is where the real physics hides. We can measure every photon, but not the shimmer of awe they inspire. Yet both emerge from the same underlying field. In the quantum story, information is never lost, it only changes form. In the story of consciousness, experiences also never vanish completely. They reshape the field that will give birth to new moments. Maybe memory, emotion, and imagination are the internal geometry of space-time seen from inside. If that is true, then death itself becomes less of an ending and more of a phase change. Awareness may release its current configuration and rejoin the greater coherence from which it came. Matter returns to dust, but information persists, integrated into the field. The fear that arises when confronting this idea is the mind's instinct to protect individuality. The precious memory of being this particular someone. It whispers, don't look too far beyond, or you'll disappear. But when you do dare to look, what stares back is vast and welcoming. Consciousness recognizing itself in infinite disguise. Take one more slow breath. Feel how each inhale is a wave rising, each exhale a collapse, a microcosm of cosmic rhythm. Within that rhythm, countless probabilities become actuality. Even in something as simple as breathing, the same laws that govern galaxies apply. Gravity gathers gas into stars, lungs gather oxygen into blood. Both are acts of communion, exchanges of information and energy guided by the same invisible mathematics. The universe is always solving differential equations, and you are part of its ongoing computation of being. Now think about dreams. Every night your brain constructs entire universes, landscapes, emotions, histories, while the body lies still. In dreams, physics bends but coherence remains. Gravity loosens, time stretches, yet consciousness continues to create order from chaos. This nightly rehearsal might hint that reality itself is a scaled-up dream, stabilized by collective agreement. When you wake from a dream, you call that world unreal. When you awaken from the illusion of separateness, you might call this world unreal too, but in the gentlest way, as a masterpiece of self-simulation. The fear of unreality sometimes makes us cling harder to surfaces, but remember, discovering that a rainbow is an optical phenomenon doesn't make it less beautiful. Similarly, realizing that reality could be participatory makes it more intimate. Every perception becomes a handshake between mind and matter. You are not trapped in a simulation, you are co-writing it, moment by moment, line by line. Listen now to the subtle shift of perspective that follows. If consciousness is fundamental, then ethics and empathy stop being moral inventions. They become physical necessities. Hurting another consciousness is like sending turbulence through your own field. Acts of understanding stabilize coherence, acts of cruelty fracture it. The universe refines itself through feedback, through learning what harmony feels like. You can witness that feedback in everyday life, the calm that follows forgiveness, the creative surge that follows curiosity, the physical ease that follows truth spoken aloud. Those aren't metaphors, they're changes in energetic currents that your biology can measure. This brings us to perhaps the most startling implication of all, that love is not sentiment, but physics, alignment between conscious fields. When two beings share genuine care, their brain waves literally synchronize. Their hearts entrain to a common rhythm. Love is coherence made visible, order emerging from complexity. It's the universe remembering that separation was only ever a useful illusion. When love expands beyond individuals into compassion for species, ecosystems, the planet, it increases overall coherence. Awareness learns to see itself at larger and larger scales. And maybe that is the entire arc of evolution, from blind interaction to intentional harmony, matter learning to love through experience. Planets forming, organisms evolving, societies growing more empathetic, all expressions of the same aim to stabilize awareness through understanding. Physics would call this minimizing entropy, poets call it enlightenment. Different vocabularies, one movement toward balance. You might wonder then what to do with such a grand idea in an ordinary human life. The answer is beautifully small. Pay attention. Observation is creation. Every time you truly look, at a leaf, at another person, at a thought, you fine-tune reality's fabric in your vicinity. When you concentrate on gratitude, circuits in your brain strengthen, energy distribution becomes efficient, coherence spreads. The hidden physics of consciousness thrives in those micro moments of presence. You don't need equations to practice it. You just need awareness steeped in wonder. Perhaps the mind hides this truth because wonder, left unchecked, would overwhelm us. To function, we need the illusion of separation and control. So the universe, ever gentle, lets awareness forget itself just enough to participate in time. You wake each day believing you begin again. In truth, existence has never stopped breathing you into being. The self is the story awareness tells so it can watch its own unfolding from within. And now, as this exploration fades towards silence, reflect on how far you've traveled without moving an inch, from neurons to galaxies, from thought to space-time. None of it required belief, only curiosity and the courage to rest inside not knowing. That's the most scientific state there is. The physicist and the mystic share this humility. Both stand before the mystery and whisper, more is happening here than we can measure. So tonight, if sleep arrives, let it come as an extension of this journey. As you drift, imagine consciousness shimmering beyond your dreams, weaving probabilities into tomorrow's dawn. Remember that reality may be watching itself through your eyes, learning, wondering, evolving. Each heartbeat is a note in the grand equation, each breath a variable solving itself. The universe is awake because you are, and when you open your eyes again, whenever that is, notice the first light filtering through whatever window frames your world. Consider that this light is billions of years old, having traveled through cosmic dust to meet your gaze. In that moment, observer and observed merge, completing the loop of awareness and physics once more. You don't need to understand that union completely, you only need to feel it, quiet, steady, vast. That feeling is the hidden physics of consciousness, the moment matter remembers it can see. So breathe, and let the knowing settle. You are not separate from the equation. You are the variable the universe uses to solve itself. Sleep peacefully, conscious particle of the cosmos. The experiment continues, and through you, its next discovery is already unfolding.